Hey guys, welcome back. If you're new to my channel or just not yet subscribed, my name's Brittany, and definitely make sure to hit the subscribe button. If you like anything spooky, mythological, or paranormal, then you are in the right place. Before we get started, I just want to remind everybody about the giveaway. So you'll get items from Casely and Truleen, along with a couple other things, and all you have to do to enter is like this video, hit the subscribe button, make sure that bell's on, and comment your favorite mythological creature down below, and you're entered. As long as you enter before April 1st, then you will be in the running for the mystery box completely free, and I will be announcing the winner later on that week. So you can't really see Castiel, but he is here. And we are diving into the second part. So if you guys have not seen the first part, you need to pause this video and go watch that. And then come back. Because when I tell you the story is crazy, that is an understatement. So part one, I did pre-read before coming on here and telling you guys it. But part two, I didn't. So you guys are going to get to see my real reactions to this story. Martin's hands trembled as he fumbled around with an ancient lighter. After several tries at producing little more than pathetic sparks, he finally managed to light a cigarette. Smoke filled his office as he took 2 deep drags. "You don't smoke," I said after an uncomfortably long silence. The fresh clothes I'd been given felt a size too small, and though I thoroughly washed every inch of my body, I could still smell the blood. Its metallic tinge only barely faded in the haze of cigarette smoke. I used to. Only stopped after my father succumbed to lung cancer. Not that any of that matters now. It won't be long now. He fell silent once again, his face of emotion, yet I saw the horror hidden in his eyes, and his hands betraying him with each tremble. But I needed answers, regardless of how uncomfortable it would make him. "Adam's dead," I said. "Why are we still sitting here?" "What do you suggest we do?" Martin asked. "We need to alert the authorities. Someone just killed your employee, your friend," I said, anger rising within me for each word Martin spoke. Martin took another deep drag of his cigarette. "What exactly do you think happened back there?" "There must have been someone else there. Maybe a patient or accomplice looking to free patient 39. I don't know. But it's above our pay grade. We need to call someone in," I argued. "Someone else?" Martin asked. "There was no one else there. So Adam just died? Are you trying to say he killed himself?" "No, he did not. Something did. Something that is going to come for all of us. Adam never should have brought you in here. This is not a psychiatric case." "Then what the fuck is it?" I asked. Martin paused for a moment as he carefully contemplated his next words. But as hard as he tried, he was at a loss. "I don't know," was the only response he could conjure. "I just know it's connected to our guest." "Patient 39? I asked. Martin nodded. "I want to talk to him," I demanded. "It won't help us." "But it would give us answers. If you think the patient is responsible, why is Adam dead while I'm sitting here alive?" Before I could ask any further questions, the door to Martin's office creaked open. A tired-looking woman walked in without saying a word. She placed a videotape on the desk. "Bring me the last one too, will you?" Martin asked. She nodded and left the office. "What's that?" I asked. "Something you need to see." He extinguished his cigarette in the still foggy room and picked up the tape. While the technology was archaic, I knew the facility used them for the ancient security cameras around the building. Martin wasn't just old-fashioned, but paranoid about newer technologies. Anything connected to the internet was a security risk, in his opinion. Martin walked over to a large closet at the end of his room. Within was a television with an old VHS player. He inserted the tape and hit play. The oddly familiar sound of the tape spinning filled the room as a static-filled image appeared on the screen. "This might explain what I can't," Martin said. A date appeared on the top left side of the screen reading February 18th. The footage itself showed the cell block I'd walked through only hours earlier. At that point in time, the cell block was still filled to the brim with patients awaiting evaluation. While there was no audio, I could imagine the sound of the place, filled with screams and wails accompanied only by frantic rambles and threats. Due to the position of the cameras, we only got partial view into each cell. Still, it left the inmates with little privacy, but it aimed to ensure none could harm themselves. It wasn't entirely successful, as some still managed to find creative ways to end their own existence, but most remained alive to receive treatment. A minute passed with little outside the ordinary, and my patient was about to reach its limit. "What exactly am I looking for?" I asked. "Keep your eyes on room number 9, he said. Within was a patient I never had the pleasure of speaking to, an elderly man looking too frail to stand on his own 2 feet. Yet, according to his file, he'd murdered 2 of his own siblings during a family dinner. He claimed the voices, demanded he stop eating until he could sacrifice 3 family members. Alas, he only got to 2 before being apprehended. He walked into view of the camera, stood at the edge of his cell, staring longingly at one of the windows on the other side of the hallway. While the footage was poor in quality, there was a couple of red marks on his forearms that could have been self-inflicted wounds. Within a few seconds, blood started oozing out from the wounds, dripping onto the floor below. He just ignored it, staring at the daylight touching the bars of his cell. We were watching the life drain from his body real time, yet he didn't seem the least bothered about his rapidly approaching demise. Just like Adam, he held on long beyond what should have been possible. Even as the blood flow slowed, he remained standing. It would take another 2 minutes for the emergency response team to come to his aid, but then it was all too late to even attempt resuscitation. He fell limp to the ground, dead before hitting the floor. In spite of this gruesome sight, I didn't feel surprised. He could have easily cut himself before walking into the frame. Tragic. But patients commit suicide. It's a sad fact of life, I said. We found nothing inside his room. Nothing sharp enough to cause these wounds. Anything and everything can be used as a weapon. You told me that. A broken bed frame, even tightly rolled up toilet paper. It doesn't mean he was killed by a supernatural entity, I said, clinging on to my skepticism. Just keep watching, Martin demanded. The tape had clearly been edited, cutting to a different camera, displaying the other half of the cells. The date now read February 19th. Room number 2, Martin said. A woman sat on the floor inside, next to the bed. She was speaking to someone. But without audio, we could only guess who she thought she was talking to. I personally interviewed her. She was a treatment-resistant schizophrenia patient. She tried all drugs known to man. When those failed, even electroshock therapy was administered without success. Though she was sick, she's always been a kind-hearted soul, until something within her broke, causing her to kill her own mother. Throughout our many interviews, she never once mentioned why or even acknowledged her death. But had she not been caught, she would have killed many more. She had a list of people she thought were meant to die. One she repeated out loudly during every single session. That's quite terrifying. An MRI had revealed a tumor in her brain, which was thought to have worsened her already fragile mind. But despite her heartbreaking story, she was too dangerous to be let outside. She's dead? I asked, knowing what was to come. Martin remained silent as the tape kept playing. But he wasn't looking at the screen. He'd already seen the horrors that were about to unfold. There she sat, talking to a non-existing person or monster her own mind had conjured, when a red spot appeared on her shirt. It was blood soaking through her clothes from a deep cut on her abdomen. Another followed on her chest, then her legs. Her clothes turned a deep red color as blood drained from her body. But she seemed oblivious to it all. She just carried on her conversation as her face turned pale. That's enough, I said somberly. Martin paused the video in response and put a hand on my shoulder. This is why I didn't want you involved. Adam never should have called you. The woman had clearly not killed herself. The injuries, though hidden beneath her clothes, had just formed as she sat on the floor talking. Despite her sickness, she never appeared suicidal. She firmly believed she had to kill people on her list before departing the world. Yet, she had died. I don't understand, I said. How can this be possible? That's a question I would like answered too, Martin said with defeat in his voice. My stomach churned as the gravity of the situation finally hit me. I excused myself to the bathroom, where I proceeded to empty my guts into the toilet. As I flushed the half-digested lunch, I felt a sting on my arm. A long but superficial cut had formed on the backside of my left forearm. It barely produced any blood, but it burned like someone had poured salt on it. Had I scratched myself without noticing? Not wanting Martin to ask questions, and still fighting my own mind on what I had witnessed, I decided to cover the wound up without telling him. As I washed my face, I tried to come up with a reasonable explanation as to what had killed the patients and Adam, but my thoughts were preoccupied with the horrific sight of the dead. I must have spent more time in the bathroom than I thought, because before I knew it, Martin came knocking on the door asking if I was all right. I'm fine, I called back out, but even I didn't believe it. I spent another 5 minutes pulling myself together before returning to Martin's office. He looked concerned as he saw my pale face and tired eyes. I could tell he wanted to mention it, but he refrained from doing so. What's his name? I asked. The patient's? I nodded. The thought hadn't dawned on me yet why it hadn't been given to me in the first place. I hadn't even thought to ask. I don't know his name. He hasn't been willing to share much personal information. We just know he's been hanging around one of those Nordic bike shops. Bad crowd to fall in with. But we don't know if he's working with them or just buying their drugs, Morn explained. Norwegians? I asked. Yeah, why? It only hit me why the demon's name Draugr had felt so familiar. I'd grown up on stories about Norse mythology, and though most were little more than faint memories, I definitely recognized the name. No reason, I was just curious. I lied, trying to steer Martin away from the supernatural aspect of the case. The door to Martin's office opened once more, and the same woman strolled in with a new videotape. What's that? I asked. Footage from today, the woman said. I didn't watch it. That's all right, Laura. You don't need to, Martin reassured her. You should go home. Get some rest. The suggestion seemed to relieve her, yet she lingered in the office. Is there something wrong? Martin asked. It's just the patient. He wants to see the doctor, she said. He wants me? I asked, surprised. She nodded. He wants to ask you something. He said if you don't hear him out, more people are going to die. Though she didn't say it out loud, I could tell she believed his threat. I was still holding on to my thin thread of rationalization, but even I was starting to doubt my beliefs. What does he want to ask me? She looked at me, confused but afraid. Are your eyes open? And that is how part 2 ends, guys. Ugh, yikes. What do you guys think of this? Hi, Butter.
Hi. I guess from multiple angles.
So a Draugr is an undead creature from Norse mythology. They are essentially reanimated corpses, so kind of similar to zombies. So I'm curious if they meant Draugr as that was actually the demon's name, or if that's what they was called. But I'll do an entire video about these creatures. And if you guys want part 3 when it comes out, definitely make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to my channel, and hit that bell so you know every single time that I upload. And last but not least, don't forget to comment your favorite mythological creature down below. That way you were entered in the giveaway. Until next time, stay safe, keep loving spooky things, and I love you guys. Bye.